She didn't just introduce me to her parents. She looked straight into their eyes, smiled with absolute confidence, slipped her hand into mine, and said, "This is my boyfriend." In that single heartbeat, every conversation in the room stopped. Every face turned toward me. My fork froze halfway to my mouth, my pulse pounded in my ears, and I realized I had absolutely no idea what was happening. I had agreed to a simple family dinner, not to become the center of a lie that could change every life sitting around that table. If you believe in kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs encouragement today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional story. When I first met Marin, she was carrying 3 overloaded grocery bags up 4 flights of apartment stairs while trying to unlock our front door with her elbow. I had moved into the apartment less than an hour earlier, and before I even introduced myself, I was catching falling oranges and balancing a carton of eggs that nearly smashed across the hallway floor. She laughed so hard she nearly dropped everything again, and somehow that awkward first meeting became the beginning of an easy friendship neither of us expected. We were complete opposites. I preferred quiet mornings with coffee and old books. She filled every room with music, conversation, and enough energy to convince strangers they had known her for years. Yet somehow our differences fit together naturally. We became roommates because the rent was manageable, but we became friends because life kept placing us on each other's side during difficult days. My own family lived across the country, and after years of strained relationships and endless misunderstandings, holidays had become little more than dates on a calendar. I worked as a furniture designer, spending long hours shaping wood into pieces that would become part of other people's homes while quietly wondering whether I would ever feel completely at home myself. Marin worked as a pediatric occupational therapist, helping children learn to trust themselves after injuries or developmental struggles. Every afternoon she returned home with stories about tiny victories that somehow made even the hardest day seem worthwhile. One sunny Saturday morning she walked into the kitchen carrying a tray of homemade cinnamon rolls that filled the apartment with warmth before I had even finished making coffee. She looked unusually nervous despite her cheerful smile. She asked if I would come with her to her parents' annual family dinner that afternoon because everyone else would be there, including grandparents, cousins, aunts, uncles, and siblings. She admitted she hated arriving alone because every gathering became another round of questions about why she was still single. She insisted I wouldn't have to do anything except enjoy the food and survive a few hours of harmless family chaos. It sounded simple enough, and since I had no other plans, I gladly accepted. The drive to her hometown wound through green hills sparkling beneath the afternoon sun. Wheat fields rolled across the countryside like golden waves while small farms rested beneath enormous blue skies. Marin spent most of the drive telling funny childhood stories about her brothers accidentally setting off the sprinkler system inside the garage, her grandmother's obsession with feeding every visitor until they could barely stand, and the family tradition of competitive board games that regularly ended in dramatic accusations of cheating. She laughed through every memory, but every so often her smile faded for just a second before returning again. I noticed the hesitation but decided not to pry. Her parents' house looked exactly like the kind of place that collected memories instead of simply storing furniture. Flower gardens surrounded the porch, bicycles rested against the fence, and laughter floated through open windows before we even stepped inside. The smell of fresh bread, roasted vegetables, herbs, and apple pie welcomed us long before any family member did. The introductions came so quickly that I barely remembered anyone's names. Her father, Graham, shook my hand with the firm confidence of someone who had spent decades building things with his hands. Her mother, Lorraine, hugged me before I could react, thanking me for keeping Marin company in the city. Her younger cousins challenged me to backyard games before I had even taken off my jacket. For a while everything unfolded exactly as Marin had promised. It was loud, joyful, and comfortably ordinary. Then dinner began. Everyone settled around a long wooden table polished by decades of family meals. Sunlight streamed through enormous windows, making every glass sparkle while conversations overlapped into a comforting blur. Halfway through passing bowls of mashed potatoes and roasted vegetables, Lorraine smiled warmly at her daughter and casually asked whether there was finally anyone special in her life. Before I could even lift my glass, Marin reached across the table, gently held my hand, smiled without hesitation, and announced that I was her boyfriend. Silence arrived with breathtaking speed. My heart seemed to stop. I looked at Marin, searching desperately for some sign that she was joking, but her expression remained calm and convincing. Across the table, her parents exchanged surprised glances before smiles slowly spread across their faces. Her grandmother actually wiped away happy tears. Her younger cousin started whispering excitedly. Graham stood and wrapped me in a proud embrace while congratulating me for finally making an honest woman out of his stubborn daughter. I smiled because I honestly had no idea what else to do. Every instinct told me to correct the misunderstanding immediately, yet every joyful face around the table made the truth feel impossibly cruel. Marin squeezed my hand beneath the table, and although she never spoke another word about it during dinner, her eyes silently begged me to trust her. The meal continued with endless stories, laughter, and family traditions. I answered careful questions without technically lying whenever possible, describing our friendship, our apartment, and how much I respected Marin. Somehow every truthful sentence only convinced them further that we were deeply in love. As the afternoon stretched on, guilt grew heavier inside me. Finally, while everyone else gathered outside to prepare dessert on the patio, Marin quietly asked if we could take a short walk through the nearby orchard. The moment we were alone, apologies poured from her before I had the chance to ask a single question. She confessed that months earlier, after another exhausting family gathering filled with pressure about marriage and relationships, she had impulsively told her parents she had started seeing someone. At first it was supposed to buy her a few months of peace. Then the harmless lie became harder to undo. Every phone call brought new questions. Every holiday included excitement about meeting the mysterious boyfriend. She had intended to tell the truth before this dinner, but when she heard her grandmother had recently received difficult medical news, she couldn't bear the thought of disappointing everyone during what might become one of their last large family gatherings together. She admitted inviting me had been a terrible decision, and she fully expected me to walk away angry forever. Instead, I simply asked why she had chosen me. Her answer caught me completely off guard. She explained that pretending required someone she already trusted completely. Someone kind enough not to humiliate her. Someone whose presence already felt safe because nothing between us had ever been complicated. She paused before quietly admitting something she had spent months trying to ignore. Somewhere between shared grocery bills, long conversations over coffee, helping each other through bad days, and laughing over burned dinners, pretending had quietly become the only part that wasn't actually fake anymore. Those words settled into the afternoon air more heavily than either of us expected. I realized then that I had been carrying feelings of my own without allowing myself to examine them. I looked forward to hearing her key in the apartment door every evening. I noticed when she was unusually quiet. I remembered every tiny victory from her work almost as proudly as she did. Somewhere along the way she had stopped being just my roommate. Before either of us could say another word, we heard footsteps approaching. Her grandmother, Eleanor, had slowly wandered into the orchard. She smiled gently, as though she already understood far more than either of us realized. She confessed that she had accidentally overheard enough of our conversation to understand the truth. Instead of reacting with anger, disappointment, or hurt, she simply sat on a nearby bench and invited us to join her. She spoke about her own marriage, admitting that when she first met her late husband there had been no lightning strike, no dramatic declaration, and no perfect beginning. There had simply been friendship, trust, respect, and two people who kept choosing each other every ordinary day until love quietly became impossible to deny. She gently reminded us that lies rarely survive for long, but genuine affection often begins in the most unexpected places. Then she smiled with remarkable warmth. She told us the only disappointment she would ever feel was seeing two people ignore feelings because they were afraid of risking the friendship they already treasured. Her words stayed with us as we walked back toward the house. This time there was no pretending. Maren gathered her family together on the sunlit patio. Her hands trembled as she admitted everything. She confessed that I had arrived believing I was simply attending dinner as her roommate and friend. She apologized for allowing fear and pressure to grow into dishonesty. For a long moment no one spoke. Then Graham slowly stood. I expected anger. Instead, he sighed with the exhaustion of a father realizing he had unknowingly placed impossible expectations on his daughter. He admitted that every question about marriage had come from love, not realizing that love had slowly started feeling like pressure. Lorraine embraced her daughter with tears in her eyes, apologizing for making her believe she had to earn acceptance through milestones instead of simply being herself. One by one, the rest of the family joined them. Nobody celebrated the lie. They celebrated the truth. As everyone returned to their conversations, the heaviness that had filled the afternoon quietly disappeared. Later, while helping clear the table, I found myself standing beside Maren beneath the warm afternoon sunlight pouring through the kitchen windows. Neither of us knew exactly what came next. So instead of making promises we weren't ready to keep, I simply asked her if she would like our very first real date to begin after we finished washing the dishes. Her smile answered before her words ever could. The weeks that followed were wonderfully awkward in the best possible way. We learned how different dating felt from friendship, yet how comforting it was that our foundation had already been built through honesty, patience, and genuine care. There were no dramatic games, no impossible expectations, and no need to pretend we were perfect. We simply chose each other a little more every day. Months later, when we returned to her parents' home for another family dinner, there were no surprises waiting around the table. No hidden stories. No nervous introductions. Graham greeted me with the same warm handshake, Lorraine hugged me again, Eleanor smiled knowingly from her favorite chair, and this time when someone asked how we had become a couple, everyone laughed before Maren admitted that the strangest lie of her life had unexpectedly led both of us toward the most honest love we had ever known. Before we finish, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever discovered that honesty, even after a mistake, brought you closer to someone instead of pushing them away? Leave a meaningful comment below and share the lesson this story reminded you of. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. Sometimes life doesn't begin with perfect timing or perfect words. Sometimes it begins with an unexpected mistake, a courageous confession, and people willing to choose forgiveness over pride. The strongest relationships are rarely the ones that start flawlessly. They are the ones that survive truth, grow through grace, and prove that second chances can become the first chapter of a beautiful forever.